This is Nate here with the podcast, It Takes a Christian Village. Today I want to talk about something that's very, very, very disturbing. It's a situation that we as adults may not recognize it for what it is. Sometimes we see our children act out or they're doing some type of weird behavior, and we just strike it up as them being bad, them being rebellious, and just anything that can come to our minds that we think is the reason why they displaying this particular behavior, or even tracing it back to that's how your mama is, or that's how your daddy is. But sometimes it's something deeper than that. I've learned about a little while ago this particular thing called adverse childhood experiences. And what it deals with is with young people, kids, going through certain situations in the early part of their lives that ultimately affects them later on in life. Now, I'm just a novice talking about this, and as you all know, and I say it all the time, I'm an advocate for the young people, kids, youth, and I'm trying to relate to them and reach them. So that being said, on this adverse childhood experience, when this was, I guess it was initially discovered in 2014. And, just, wow. Open your ears, open your mind, and just listen and feast on some of this great information this particular physician back in 2014 had to say about this thing we call adverse childhood experiences. Check it out.
In the mid-90s, the CDC and Kaiser Permanente discovered an exposure that dramatically increased the risk for 7 out of 10 of the leading causes of death in the United States. In high doses, it affects brain development, the immune system, hormonal systems, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed. Folks who are exposed in very high doses have triple the lifetime risk of heart disease and lung cancer, and a 20-year difference in life expectancy. Now, the exposure I'm talking about is not a pesticide or a packaging chemical. It's childhood trauma. Okay, what kind of trauma am I talking about here? I'm not talking about failing a test or losing a basketball game. I am talking about threats that are so severe or pervasive that they literally get under our skin and change our physiology. Things like abuse or neglect, or growing up with a parent who struggles with mental illness or substance dependence. Now, for a long time, I viewed these things in the way I was trained to view them, either as a social problem, refer to social services, or as a mental health problem, refer to mental health services. And then something happened to make me rethink my entire approach. A lot of kids were being referred to me for ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But when I actually did a thorough history and physical, what I found was that for most of my patients, I couldn't make a diagnosis of ADHD. Most of the kids I was seeing had experienced such severe trauma that it felt like something else was going on. Somehow, I was missing something important. So I began reading everything that I could get my hands on about how exposure to adversity affects the developing brains and bodies of children. And then one day, my colleague walked into my office and he said, "Dr. Burke, have you seen this?" In his hand was a copy of a research study called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. That day changed my clinical practice and ultimately my career. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Study is something that everybody needs to know about. It was done by Dr. Vince Felitti at Kaiser and Dr. Bob Onda at the CDC, and together they asked 17,500 adults about their history of exposure to what they called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. Those include physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, physical or emotional neglect, parental mental illness, substance dependence, incarceration, parental separation or divorce, or domestic violence. For every yes, you would get a point on your ACE score. And then what they did was they correlated these ACE scores against health outcomes. What they found was striking. Two things. Number one, ACEs are incredibly common. 67% of the population had at least one ACE, and 12.6%, 1 in 8, had 4 or more ACEs. The second thing that they found was that there was a dose-response relationship between ACEs and health outcomes. The higher your ACE score, the worse your health outcomes. This isn't science. This is just bad behavior. It turns out this is exactly where the science comes in. We now understand, better than we ever have before, how exposure to early adversity affects the developing brains and bodies of children. It affects areas like the nucleus accumbens, the pleasure and reward center of the brain that is implicated in substance dependence. It inhibits the prefrontal cortex, which is necessary for impulse control and executive function, a critical area for learning. And on MRI scans, we see measurable differences in the amygdala, the brain's fear response center. So there are real neurologic reasons why folks exposed to high doses of adversity are more likely to engage in high-risk behavior. And that's important to know. Children are especially sensitive to this repeated stress activation because their brains and bodies are just developing. High doses of adversity not only affect brain structure and function, they affect the developing immune system, developing hormonal systems, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed. The science is clear. Early adversity dramatically affects health across the lifetime.
Now, as you notice, she was giving a speech, a seminar, something of sorts at a facility that had a bunch of apparently doctors, surgeons, people in the medical field, and she was having this conversation or giving this speech. So I couldn't bring everything, but the bigger point is start researching this thing called adverse childhood experiences. It's a real thing. Our kids are dealing with so much, as they're growing up, and it's starting to affect them in life. And if we really want to keep it real, some of us as adults have probably gone through some traumatic situations as children. And it actually has made us who we are today, good or bad. But the fact of the matter is, we're in the 2000s. We're in 2025 right now. And we have so many different things at our disposal to try to help these kids and how to go to bat for them and how to encourage them, how to treat them medically, mentally, whatever the case. But it's going to take us adults it's going to take us deciding within ourselves that we want to do something for these kids. We want to do something about their situation. Even if it's just sitting down, having a conversation, talking with them, finding out how they feel, finding out how their day was, what's going on at school. Not just asking about the grades all the time, because depending on their situation and what they're dealing with, that could be an indication on why their grades are dropping. So not jumping on them for the bad grades or grades dropping, but trying to find out what's the source. And it may not be anything on the inside of the house that's causing an adverse situation with the children, with the child, or any of the youth. It could be teenagers. It could be something in the community. Maybe not in your house, but what about the house up the street or around the corner? What about the people in the community who are dealing with your kids? Who is talking to your kids? Who is speaking something into your kids' lives that you probably don't know about? But that's the thing. We have to get to the point that we're finding out, understanding, fully dissecting what's going on with our kids. What are they doing? What are they watching? These things can cause grave damage when unchecked, untreated, and unrecognized. But it's up to us adults to find out what's going on with our kids. At least research what this thing about adverse childhood experience is all about. So again, this is Nate, the host of this podcast. It takes a Christian village. And I'll see you again soon.